Welcome to Season 5 of the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for your quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today in the Workplace Minute, we're looking at caregiving in the U.S. This is one of H3HR Advisors' top workplace trends in 2026, and it's easy to see why. Millions of employees are balancing work with caring for loved ones, and it's time for employers to start treating caregiving as a core part of employee well-being. Let's break it down. According to the latest Caregiving in the U.S. 2025 research from AARP and the National Alliance for Caregiving, caregiving is no longer something that affects just some employees. Today, more than 63 million adults in the U.S. are providing ongoing care to a family member or a loved one with a medical condition or a disability. That's nearly 1 in 4 adults, and it represents a 45% increase over the past decade. Caregiving has become a defining feature of working life in America, whether employers are prepared for it or not. And what's striking about today's caregiving landscape is how broad and diverse it's become. The average caregiver is about 51 years old, but caregivers span every generation. Many are caring for aging parents or spouses, while younger workers are often supporting relatives with mental health conditions, recovering from surgery, or other short-term physical needs. And nearly 1/3 of caregivers are part of what's called the sandwich generation, caring for an adult while also raising children at home. For employees under 50, that number jumps to almost half. Caregiving itself has changed in intensity and duration. This is no longer a short-term disruption that resolves itself in a few months. The report shows that nearly 30% of caregivers have been providing care for 5 years or more, and the average caregiver spends about 27 hours per week on caregiving responsibilities. Almost 1 in 4 caregivers is effectively working a second full-time job on top of their paid employment, and the tasks involved go far beyond emotional support or occasional help. Caregivers are assisting with fundamentals like bathing, dressing, mobility, medication management, transportation, financial management, and even more complex medical or nursing tasks, and many without any formal training. For working-age adults, this reality collides directly with the demands of their jobs. About 7 in 10 caregivers between the ages of 18 and 64 are employed, and half of those working caregivers say that caregiving has a direct impact on their work, forcing them to get to work late, leave early, cut their hours, take unpaid time off, and pass up advancement opportunities. And despite progress in flexible work and leave policies, only about half of caregivers say that their manager even knows that they're a caregiver. And so for many employees, caregiving remains something they try to manage quietly, often at significant personal and professional costs. And that cost shows up clearly in the data. Nearly half of caregivers report at least one negative financial impact that's tied to caregiving. Many have drained their short-term savings, taken on additional debt, or delayed their retirements. Others struggle simply to afford services that would make the caregiving more sustainable. Emotional and physical strain is widespread as well. A majority of caregivers report high emotional stress, and nearly half say caregiving takes a physical toll. And feelings of isolation have increased since 2020, and many caregivers say they have difficulty taking care of their own health while prioritizing someone else's needs. At the same time, this research also highlights something important. Caregivers are not just asking for sympathy. They're asking for systems, tools, and support that recognize caregiving as a normal and essential part of working life. Caregivers consistently say they would benefit from better access to information, care coordination, navigation supports, training, and respite services. Yet today, only a small fraction of workers receive those supports. For example, while nearly 40% of caregivers say respite care would be helpful, only about 13% report using it, often because it's difficult to access, it's poorly coordinated, or it's hard to trust. So this is where employers, and particularly HR leaders and benefits leaders, have an opportunity to make a real difference. Supporting caregivers does not start and end with a leave policy. It means designing benefits ecosystems and acknowledging how complex caregiving has become. This can include flexible work arrangements that are really usable, not just written down. It can mean paid or partially paid leave for caregivers, access to employee assistance programs that actually understand caregiving, and benefits that help caregivers navigate healthcare, long-term care, backup, and emergency care, especially for caregivers balancing care for children and community resources. Many employers are also beginning to look at services that help caregivers coordinate the care, manage all the logistics, and reduce the cognitive and mental load that comes with caring for someone else while still working full-time. Services that assist with care planning, finding providers, managing appointments, understanding your benefits, handling the vast majority of paperwork, that can be game changers for employees who are otherwise stretched really thin. These kinds of supports don't just help caregivers personally, they help reduce absenteeism, presenteeism, burnout, and unwanted turnover. The bigger takeaway from this research is that caregiving is not a temporary trend driven by a single demographic shift. It's a structural feature of today's workforce, shaped by longer life expectancy, more chronic health conditions, gaps in affordable long-term care, and changing family dynamics. Employers that continue to treat caregiving as an exception risk losing experienced, capable employees who simply cannot sustain the double burden without support. So here's the call to action. If you're responsible for benefits, well-being, or workforce strategy, it's time to move caregiving out of the margins and into the core of your employee value proposition. Ask whether your benefits truly reflect how employees live and work today, and examine whether the caregivers in your organization feel safe, discussing their needs. Do they feel supported by their managers, and are they equipped with the tools they need, not just your good intentions? Caregiving is already shaping productivity, engagement, and retention across the workforce. The question for organizations is whether they will respond reactively or whether they will lead by intentionally building caregiver support into the fabric of their benefits and well-being strategies. Because for millions of employees, caregiving is not something they might face one day. It's something they're managing right now. Thanks so much for listening, and a big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. If this episode made you think about how your organization can embrace and support your employees who are providing care, please share it with a colleague. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.